Hey everyone! Today we're going to jump into a really powerful story, pulled straight from the personal journals of a young man staring down the Vietnam War draft. It's a deep dive into faith, conscience, and how one single choice can end up defining an entire life.
So let's get right into it. We're starting with a voice from the past, a high school senior writing this down in his journal back in September 1969. He's facing this absolutely massive, life-changing decision, and you can just feel the weight of it in every single word. Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. It's 1969 at the Scattergood Friends School in Iowa. The Vietnam War is raging, and the military draft is a very real, very present threat. For the young men there, this wasn't some abstract political debate. Nope. It was a deeply personal crisis that put the government's demands in a head-on collision with their own conscience. And this, right here, this really gets to the heart of the dilemma he was facing. It wasn't just about the war. He was looking at two completely different paths, two totally different lives. On one side, you've got the normal life, go to college, get a good job, be comfortable. On the other, a life of conviction. It meant taking a stand, risking it all, and living by what you believe is right, no matter the cost. So to really get why he made the choice he did, we have to dig into the spiritual foundation it was all built on. His actions weren't coming out of nowhere. They were deeply, deeply rooted in the core beliefs of his Quaker faith. It was both his compass and his anchor. Everything really starts with this central Quaker idea, the inner light. So, this is a huge deal. It's the belief that divine guidance isn't something you get from a priest or a book. It's inside you. It's a direct, personal, moral compass, and you're supposed to listen to it, even if, especially if, it tells you to go against what everyone else is doing. And building right on top of that is the peace testimony. Now, this is probably one of the most famous Quaker principles. It's this powerful conviction that taking part in war is just fundamentally incompatible with their faith. And we're not talking about a casual preference for peace. For them, it's a spiritual demand to actively refuse violence. And you can see this wasn't just his own personal idea. This quote comes from a letter that was making the rounds in the Quaker community at the time. The argument here is powerful. It says that if you really believe war is wrong, then just being a conscientious objector isn't enough. True faith means refusing to cooperate with the entire system that makes war possible. So you take that spiritual foundation, right? And what started as this internal, private struggle, well, it turned into a very deliberate, very public act of resistance. This was him putting his faith into action. And believe me, there were very real consequences. And you can see from this timeline, this was absolutely not a snap decision. This was a slow burn. It unfolded over more than 2 years. It starts with him just wrestling with it in his journal. Then he takes the first step and turns in his draft card. And then, finally, the ultimate act of refusal, mailing that final letter when he gets the order to report. Each step was a conscious, deliberate choice. And man, these words, these are from that final letter he sent to the draft board. It is just such a powerful refusal. He's not just saying, I won't go. He's explaining why. He's making the case that the draft system itself is a destructive force, one that crushes not just life, but the human spirit itself. But here's where the story gets really interesting. This intensely personal stand against the draft, it wasn't the end of the story. In fact, it was the beginning of something much, much bigger. It was a catalyst that opened his eyes to a much broader fight for social justice. You can really see his perspective evolving here. The whole journey began with a testimony against something, against the violence of war. But over time, and through experiences like community service work, it grew into a testimony for something, for a more just, more fair society. That's a subtle but huge shift in thinking. And what you see in his writings is that he starts connecting the dots. His stand against the war wasn't happening in a vacuum. He began to see how all these struggles were tied together, how war is connected to poverty, and how poverty is connected to racism, and how that's all connected to environmental issues. His personal stand became part of a bigger, more holistic worldview. Okay, let's bring this all home with a really beautiful and profound idea that comes out of his later reflections, an idea that kind of puts a whole new lens on this entire journey. I mean, just listen to this quote from the Ojibwe author Richard Wagamese. All that we are is story. It just hits you, right? The idea is that your life isn't just a bunch of random things you do. It's a story.
And every choice you make, big or small, is another sentence, another paragraph in that story that you're writing. And that idea, it fits so perfectly with Quaker tradition. They have this amazing practice of preserving and sharing these personal stories of faith and action. It's not just for history's sake. It's so that the courage and the lessons from one person's journey can light a fire for the next generation.
So this all leaves us with a really powerful question, one that's right at the heart of Quakerism. What does it mean to let your life speak? In a world that feels so complicated, so full of noise, this story is a reminder that maybe the loudest, most important statement you can make is the story you choose to live. So what story are you creating?